Well, hello there, motherfuckers, and I have compiled a list of the top 10 most annoying habits of the WWE. So they've been in a rut for a long time now. It's been happening really ever since the PG era. Funny, once they've been doing the PG era, they've had these same problems for years now, the same thing. So I've really gotten to the bottom of them because now if you really can't notice the things that are on this list, you're just pretty much blinded. You're watching the show with blinders on. So hopefully you'll listen to me with this list. You'll listen to your YWC champ and you will start to understand what exactly the problems are with this product. It's not the talent. I've said it time and time again. Certain guys like Fat Boy Owens and Fat Boy Joe could definitely benefit from a bit of a makeover, losing a couple of pounds. The fuck boy doesn't really look like he deserves to be in the position he's in. Bitch boy cab driver Sami Zayn also is a guy that they need to have him work out a little bit more, develop more of a personality. But most of that falls on creative and falls on the booking team. So let's talk a little bit about these top 10 offenses. So, these are in no particular order because really, when you get down to it, all of these problems should be solved. They're equally as important as it pertains to producing an entertaining wrestling product. So at number 10, the champion's always losing. So when you're the YWC champ like myself, you should never lose. And you've seen year after year here in the YWC, I never lose. And that's because I'm a lot like Neville. I've held the belt for a long, long time, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any. But even Neville lost on Raw, for God's sakes. You had uh, Alexa Bliss also getting pinned on the same show. Champions always losing, and the same thing goes for Money in the Bank winners. And we're probably going to see Baron Corbin in the same position. Ambrose cashed in right away last year, so we didn't have to sit through him losing constantly. But Rollins constantly lost, and as a matter of fact, he even lost on the very show that he won his first WWE title at WrestleMania in 2015. Just to put it in perspective of how these champions always lose. You would think that if you won a belt, you're not considered to be a loser, but once you get one of these things, it always seems like that's it for you. You're gonna be losing, and when they have their title match, a lot of times they'll win, but leading up to the match, they end up making the champions look like losers. Like it makes them look like, well, how did they even get the belt in the first place? Like if you are a guy who hasn't watched the show in a long time and you tune in and you see these guys losing all the time in such pathetic fashion, you ask yourself, well, how the hell did he even win a championship like that? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And this was the case with Charlotte, even. She held the belt for a while at one point. She had a streak, and she also had like a pay per view victory streak. And of course, they jobbed her out time and time again because that's what they always do. No champion is allowed to have heat, especially if you're a heel champion. No, no, there's no way you're allowed to have heat. And if you get any heat, the baby face has to come right back right away and has to get that heat back on him, in turn losing the heat from the heel. At number 9, the backstage area is always the same. Every single time they're backstage, just take a look at SmackDown when all the women were talking, and we're going to get to that. That's also on the list. Not just that one particular segment, but I'll get to it in a moment. You'll notice most of the time, like 90% of the time on these shows, the wrestlers are always standing in front of the logo of the show. Here's the logo, and here's the two wrestlers talking, or how many ever people it is. The interviewer is always in the same spot. The interviewer will never go into the locker room or never go into the parking lot or go into any other section of the arena. If you watch the show, you would think that the arena is just, the backstage area is just that little tiny place right in front of that little screen that displays the logo of the show. And it's very claustrophobic. You watch this show and you feel like, do these guys have any room to move back there? Like they have no other place where they could shoot these interviews, and it just feels very boring and very dry all the time. You think back to during not just the Attitude Era, but all the other times throughout history, and you might even say, okay, well, during the 80s, they might have had the same thing where they'd stand in one position. But the only difference then was that those guys had tons of charisma. They didn't really need a different area to be interviewed in, so it was kind of forgiven in a way because they had so much charisma. It didn't matter what the background looked like. Nobody was concentrating on that. But if these promos are going to be as boring and dry as they are, they might as well change up the scenery a bit. So they need to get past that already. Like every single thing occurs in that one same spot, that one magical little spot. Like those coordinates, it's like they're OCD. If it does not take place in that area, it's no good. They can't have a backstage interview anywhere else. It has to occur right in front of the show's logo, right there. Like this is the interview spot. You got to stand right there, motherfucker, or else the interview's not happening. I mean, like seriously, are you joking? They can't change it up a bit every now and again. And number 8, matches that never happen. We just had this happen just on SmackDown, and it also happened on Raw like 2 weeks ago during the Gold Dust R-Truth match. They bring the guys out for the match. They're ready to go. They do the entrances, and then they start brawling before the match. And then they just brawl. Usually the heel will run away, which is also something I'm going to get to on this list. The heel's going to run away, and then and then the match just never happens. The actual match never happens. They just cancel it. They're like, well, that's it for them, and then we never see them for the rest of the show. Now, if they wanted to continue this throughout the night, then that would be a different story. But when it comes to Baron Corbin, your Money in the Bank winner, and Naka Murphy backstage, these guys, they just like brawl before the match and it doesn't happen. It's like, they did this at Great Balls of Fire and the match still happened. They still had a pre-match brawl, but then the match still happened. So then when you go to another match, it's just confusing. Like, why doesn't it happen? Why don't they continue with the match? This used to happen all the time. A wrestler would attack another one before the bell, but we'd still have the match. Now, if they attack them before the match, then that's it. That's all you're going to get. They're just like, oh, well, just fuck it. We're not going to go and have the match anymore. How much sense does that make? You just flew these guys in, and that's all you're going to have them do. And number 7, 50-50 booking, probably the most annoying thing ever. If somebody wins a match, then they have to lose the next match because they got to even everything out. And this gets annoying. And this also falls into what I mentioned at number 10 with champions losing. If a champion should always be winning. If a champion wins a match and they retain their title the very next night, they have to lose. It makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, like, there's something in wrestling called heat. You get heat. The heat is usually done by the heel. The bad guy will usually beat up on the baby face week after week, keep on one-upping everybody. They'll seem unbeatable. And then all of a sudden, you'll usually have him get his comeuppance. The baby face will end up, taking it to the heel at the pay-per-view or whatever. And they just don't do that same style anymore. And it's part of this thing like, okay, you want to mix it up every now and again. I get that. You don't want to make things seem too robotic or by the numbers. That's understandable, but there is a reason why certain things in wrestling should remain the way how they were and not be changed. Because, if a heel can't get his heat, then it really doesn't help him move up any. You're not going to make this guy be really super hated if you keep just having him go back and forth with wins and losses. And then you have guys like Brian James on Twitter, Road Dog, saying wins and losses don't matter. Oh, they don't? Then how come the announcers are always there talking about wins and losses all the time? That it's all about winning. Or half the time when heels win matches, Michael Cole will even say, "Oh, a win's a win." Remember that Jr. would be screaming at the top of his lungs, he cheated, King," and he wouldn't let the heels get away with it. But now it's like it's okay if the heel cheats. Let's not even mention it or anything because a win's a win. But then again, Brian James says that wins don't matter. So which one is it? Huh? You can't have it both ways. Either they matter or they don't. But the 50-50 booking shows that, well, they don't really care what position it leaves the wrestlers in. As long as one person wins, the matches don't matter then. Then why have matches at all? Because we could all predict how they're going to happen. You're going to win this one. You're going to lose that one. It's like ridiculous already. How could anybody build any heat with this crap or get over? That's why, because they have to have people win. People are going to watch these shows and they're going to be like, well, if you're not winning, then you're a loser. It makes you look like a loser because, if they weren't losers, then they'd win, obviously. So the 50-50 booking, at least you even see a lot of marks even admitting that this is hurting the product. And thank God they at least realize that. At number 6, the booking of the women's division. So, back in 2015, all of a sudden people started caring about women's wrestling. A bunch of cucks got together and says, "Oh, I love women's wrestling. I'm not sexist or anything." No, seriously, guys, I'm not sexist, so I love women's wrestling. Feeling that, maybe somehow, some way would get them a girlfriend. Hopefully they're hoping some girl in the YWC will admire them for putting over the women's division, when in reality, guys, no one gives a shit, okay? So it doesn't really matter. But the way how they book these girls, I've even put a lot of them over. Alexa Bliss and Charlotte are two of the most talented I've ever seen as far as women's wrestlers. But what do they do to these girls? They relegate them as being one of many in many segments. At least for a short time, you've had Charlotte in feuds with Sasha Banks, and she'd be able to cut her promo and talk to the crowd, and at least you could see her personality shine through. Now you're getting segments on Raw and SmackDown where they're putting everybody in one segment. But at least on Raw, Alexa Bliss sometimes gets around, starts talking to each and every one of the girls. But Charlotte's not even in that position. She's, they and on SmackDown they go one by one down the line of having each girl talk like a bunch of robots or like a bunch of trained seals. Like, "Oh, time for you to talk, speak," like a bunch of dogs. Basically, how it is, like a bunch of trained animals. So, there's your respect for the women right there. They don't even care. They just make like they're just one division, just like the cruiserweight division. If it wasn't for Neville, the cruiserweight division doesn't feel like it has any individuals in it at all. It's like the division seems like it matters more than the individuals. Just the novelty of having a lot of girls in the division, like that's enough for them. So they like to lump them all into one segment. And I get the psychology of why they try to do that. They figure, well, let's just get all the girls together, so we have them all in there. So it's an easy way of giving everybody some face time. But at the end of the day, you realize that that's just not possible. If you want to build characters and you want to build people up, you can't just simply throw them out there, and everyone's just going to be talking over each other or going one by one. We see how on SmackDown that just did not work out very well. But they're going to continue doing it the same way, lumping them all together. It was like in 2015, the whole novelty of having a Divas Revolution was like, oh, now we have more girls than we did before. And just failing to really explore each and every one of those girls' characters. They just lumped them into three teams. Remember that? When they had the PCP or whatever the hell it was, the Page Tap Out group or whatever the hell it was. Remember? And Team Bad, they had like three groups that they put together. It was like moronic. You know, they didn't even want to give these girls any individual personalities at first. They're like, oh, let's just make a bunch of factions and not put any effort into it at all. At number 5, former champions winning secondary titles. And we are seeing this more than ever lately. So people will probably dig through footage on the network to try to come up with examples here. And they might, and so I'll kind of stop you because, you know, I might not be a mark, but I know my history pretty well. And I'm pretty good at remembering champions. Triple H won the Intercontinental title from Jeff Hardy in 2001 when he was a part of the two-man power trip with Stone Cold. So let me drop a little bit of history on you motherfuckers here for a minute. So you could tell me that at this point, Triple H had already won the title multiple times. But Brad, you said that back in the day, you wouldn't see somebody winning that belt again after they already won the world title. But see, there was a difference there. They were a two-man power trip, and Stone Cold was the world champion. And so Triple H was his partner. So they'd already won the tag titles, I think, at this point. Or maybe they won them after he won the Intercontinental title. But anyway, the whole part of the story was that they won all the gold, all the major belts. So it made sense at that point. But other than that, you wouldn't really see it. Okay, they had Kane win the Intercontinental title because it had been a couple of years since he won the world title. But it was very, very few and far between when they would do it. There's not really that many other examples, really, that you could give. Jericho won the IC title like once or twice after being undisputed champion. Okay. But, you know, now you see it like all the time. Once somebody wins a belt, another guy. They did this starting with Jack Swagger when they started being unhappy with their champions. Swagger won the U.S. belt after winning the world title. Dean Ambrose, mere months after losing the world title, won the Intercontinental title. The Miz has never gone back and tried to win the world title, even though he deserves to be in the world title picture because he's got more charisma than 75% of the roster. And he's always with the Intercontinental title. And they keep doing this. It's the same thing with Finn Balor fighting for the Intercontinental title, and he was the first ever Universal Champion. And the same thing goes for Seth Rollins. Now he wants to be in the Intercontinental title picture. So it's like, are these guys world champion caliber wrestlers, or are they just mid-carders? They go in and out of the mid-card. And the thing is, Triple H was still the main eventer when he won the Intercontinental title at that time I was talking about in 2001. So the comparison is really moot at that point because he didn't really change in the level of where he's being booked. He was still the main eventer. See, the thing is, it's basically like they don't know how to keep these guys at the top. And they have this thing where they want to do 50-50 booking. Everybody gets a turn. Everybody gets a turn with the fucking belt. There's only one belt now where nobody gets a turn with it. That's the YWC Championship. Anyway, moving on. At number 4, heels running away. And I mentioned this before. They just did it on SmackDown. They did it with Samoa Joe before the match with Brock Lesnar. You know, they keep doing this shit. Every heel is a chicken shit heel. Every single one of them. They don't want to book it anymore where the heel one-ups the baby face, leading to the baby face getting ready to get his comeuppance. They don't want to do that anymore. So instead, they rather do this shit where they have the heel running away, Jinder's running away, Corbin's running away, Fat Boy Joe's running away. Everybody's running away. Everyone's running a fucking marathon or a triathlon or some shit. Everybody's running. Everybody's jogging. Everyone should be wearing headbands and short shorts and winning silver medals. It feels more like track than it does a wrestling match half the time, a wrestling show, because everybody's running all the time. Why is everybody fucking running away all the time? They should be running to the fights, not away from them. And they like to say, "Oh, that's because he's a chicken shit heel." Oh, really? So every single heel has the same character. What a great idea! I mean, what is this? They never had this. They used to have this character, but now every single person is it. I don't get it. At number three, the referees breaking up the fights backstage. They never used to do this back in the day. It used to be security and everything, but that's not even the point. Securities or referees, it doesn't make any sense. First of all, why can't they just have a brawl backstage where the guy gets his ass kicked and the other guy just walks away like a thug? Why don't they just do that? Instead they have not every brawl has to be a pull apart brawl backstage, okay? Where they have to, wave everybody off and somebody has to say, "Oh, you were right, I need help over here." They keep doing that at every single show where there's a backstage fight. Once in a while it's okay for the other guy to just walk away. It's like annoying, like 10 referees, "Oh, stop it." Like, it's not a match, it's a backstage fight. And they keep doing the same thing. Like, it's like so cliche after a while. This is why I'm able to compile this fucking list, because they do these things like every couple of shows. It's not every once in a while, it's all the time. And number two, one and done. And I've talked about this. Vince Russo's talked about this repeatedly. One and done. It was the same thing with Roman and Brock and Fat Boy Joe on Raw. Every single time, unless it's like a tag match on SmackDown with Cena, they don't like to weave things throughout the show. I was watching a SmackDown just the other day where it was Shane McMahon saying that The Rock and Mankind had to wrestle each other, and if they went easy on one another, they would be suspended. So after that match, they started off the show with a promo, then they had the match, then there was shit backstage, and then it led to a main event. The point is that those were the major players on the show: Mick Foley, Shane McMahon, Triple H. So they kept weaving it in and out through the show, telling a story. Why don't they do that anymore? Now it's just like this guy gets a segment, this guy gets a segment. Okay, you could do that for some of the guys, but the major stars should be reoccurring characters throughout the show. Now it's like they just get one segment each. That's not enough. That's not enough to build characters. You want to know why a guy like Roman Reigns had so much trouble getting over with the crowd? It's because they relegated him to one segment per show. They needed more time to develop this guy. If they want him to seem more important, then he has to get more time than everybody else. And it has to be in multiple segments. It's a show. But they keep formatting it in such a weird way where it's like they don't want to do more than one thing with a guy per show. Especially now, it's like, you just have Raw. So they used to be able to do this back in the day, even before SmackDown. Guys would be there. Stone Cold wouldn't just appear once. He'd appear on that show like 4 or 5 times. Now the excuse they'll give you is, "Oh, we don't want you to get sick of him." Oh, fuck that. It doesn't matter if we get sick of him or not. It's not enough. They should be having these guys constantly coming out. It's like the same thing with Brock Lesnar. You've got Wade Keller and Meltzer Magoo saying, "Oh, well, we shouldn't see more of them one time per show. We might get sick of them." Yeah, okay, maybe you, but everybody else is going to be like, "Well, what happened to those guys? They're such big stars. They show up on the middle of the show and they don't show up for another hour." You know, like, okay, they don't. Okay, maybe with some shows they don't have to do that, but every, you know, most of the shows they should have them appearing more than once. At least show them twice, maybe three times, but just one time per show. It's not enough. And number one, forgetting wrestlers, and they do this all the time, and they just did it on SmackDown. Now, you know, maybe not really forgetting them, but what they do is they don't have Orton show up. A lot of times there were shows where they didn't have Roman Reigns showing up. They just decide not to book them. You know, I guess because they don't want them to lose heat or something like that. I don't understand what it is, or they're selling injuries. So it's like on Raw, and I didn't even get to mention this, but Russo mentioned it during his podcast. So Braun Strowman managed to crawl away at the pay-per-view, you know, and didn't get medical attention because he was too proud. But somehow he was too injured not to show up on Raw. Like, I'm not really understanding this. And Jinder Mahal mentions Randy Orton on SmackDown. But where's Orton's response? Is he there? He didn't even have his own promo or anything. Like, what is this? We just forget about wrestlers. We just don't need them, I guess. They're big stars. He's the number one contender. But we don't even have to bother with Orton. I mean, like, where is he? You know, like, he's talking about it, and people are going to wonder, where is Orton? He's not there. And I'm really failing to realize this. Like, why do they do this? This is something I don't really understand. And I would say this to protect them, but when they are on the show, they don't even try to protect their big stars. They do 50-50 booking and all this crap. So why would they even just leave them out of the show? It makes no real earthly sense at all. Well, anyway, guys, there you go. There's your list. There's 10 of the most annoying habits the WWE has. And boy, oh boy, are they ever fucking annoying. And the sad thing is that these are habits that the WWE will probably never overcome because they've been doing them for years. And they still don't look like they're showing any signs of letting up anytime soon. There you go, motherfuckers. There's your list. Enjoy it. Until next time.